Thank you. If there's any questions, fire away.
So, New York will open up the window for child victims to sue.
Right.
What,
August 14th.
what do you have to prove? What evidence do you have to bring?
Well, you're going to have to show in all of these types of cases, generally they're negligence-based cases, so we're going to have to show that the congregation elders, the Watchtower corporate entity, the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses corporate entity, and the governing body of the organization at the very top, that they were negligent in their policies, in their practices, that they knew, they had reason to know that child abuse existed and was a real problem within their organization. They had no policies for protecting children, and that they knew at some level about the propensities of these particular perpetrators at the time that our clients were sexually molested. And then they covered it up. They ratified it. They ratified this behavior, they allowed it, they covered it up, they accepted it. In other words, if they didn't do anything about it, they essentially accepted it. So this goes all the way up the chain to the top. And that's why we're suing the top this time around. We haven't done that in our other cases, but we're gonna do it here.
Is there a precedent for naming the top religious leaders in clergy abuse cases, period? I mean, has the Pope ever been named?
You know, it's the unique circumstance here is that we have the equivalent of the Pope that's a resident of the United States and operates out of the United States, specifically the state of New York. So they're not a sovereign entity like the Vatican and the Pope, which makes it near impossible to sue the Pope. I know some of us in the past have tried, but it does. This is a different situation. You have a United States domiciled entity, a group of guys that are calling these shots, and I think they're going to be amenable to being sued in these lawsuits here in New York.
Hello, everybody.
Howdy.
I know, poor Mikey, he's been working in the hot sun all day and having horrible allergy attack from all the Joshua weeds or whatever they call them. They're all blooming, and it's August.
Bad time of the year for me, that's for sure.
Every year. Every
Yep.
year.
I mean, you guys should see what happens to me if I touch tumbleweed, green tumbleweed. Oh my goodness. I break out in hives. So I try to stay away from green tumbleweeds, that's for sure.
But they don't bother me, so I do the yard work.
Yes. We're here to talk a little bit more about what's going on at Watchtower Land regarding the lawsuits that are going to be now pending in New York. There's some other things going on with other organizations regarding some of these lawsuits, and we just kind of want to read an article that comes from
Law 360. It's
Right.
access to justice articles, and I'll put the link down below to this one because it says, the name of the article is, As New York Child Abuse Suits Surge, Attorneys Prepare for the Long Haul.
Right. And this is done by Frank G. Runyon, and it was done August 18th. So it's a very current article. But the things that we want to look at, and in particular, as most of you can still see behind us, Kim's left the stuff up regarding the Mormon Church. It's not just Watchtower that, you know, the governments are focusing on. You know, if any of you have seen Ugly Watchtower's video yet regarding the Newsweek article pertaining to this thing, and then there was like a little clip inserted into the article regarding the Russian ban of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I don't know if everybody caught it, but in that clip they say that Watchtower's property was seized. Now, make no mistake about it, friends, the Watchtower Babel Craft Society is looking at the big picture. They're just a small fish in the big picture. But the thing is that if the governments are recognizing that these 501c3 corporations are a business pretending to be a religion, it's not going to be too long before somebody on a very high government list or government official is going to be looking at these religions, including Watchtower, as racketeers. Okay? So there's a lot involved here. It's not just the child abuse, but it's also possible racketeering. So you want to keep that in mind, because you might just be hearing some things, 2-3 years from now about all of this, because as this article points, these lawyers are in it for the long haul.
What's really funny about this and what he's saying is he just got home and took a shower. He hasn't seen the video I did earlier
No, I haven't.
about the lawsuit against the Mormon Church. The RICO law is mentioned in that lawsuit. So, and it talks about the Mormon Church. So if you haven't seen it yet, go back and see, the video I did this morning. And in the lawsuit, it calls the Mormon Church the Mormon corporate empire.
Yeah, well, see, Watchtower's built their own corporate empire.
And he hasn't watched the second video I did about Scientology, but their Russian offices were raided and they're being charged with fraud.
Oh, wow.
So he's going to have to watch those.
Well, okay, now that you've said that, I'm going to digress just a little bit, because we really
But it's
wanted
all
to make
tied
this
in
small.
together.
We really wanted to make this a short video, but here's the thing. As Jehovah's Witnesses, we were so indoctrinated with the scriptures and Revelation that, the harlot riding the back of the beast, and, and the beast is going to turn on the harlot, eat her fleshly parts, leave her naked, yada, yada, yada. Jehovah's Witnesses, you've been expecting this because you've been preaching this all along.
So
But
why
see,
are you fighting it?
So the problem that you can't get away from is that you've indoctrinated yourself so much that we are the only true religion. Well, don't you think the Mormons say the same thing? Don't you think the Baptists say the same thing? Don't you think the Seventh-day Adventists say the same thing?
Scientology?
Don't you think Scientology, we're the true religion? So yeah, even though the governments are going to turn on all these other false religions, we're going to be the last one standing. But yet, isn't this what you want? Don't you want all religions to go down? But what you don't stop to think about and realize is that your religion, Jehovah's Witnesses, are also in the governmental crosshairs. And it's not for religious persecutions. It's not for religious ideology. It's because you're involved in criminal activity.
Now, just to remind everybody, I'm going to put a clip at the end of our video after we say goodbye, so stay tuned for that. It's a few years old, and it was a clip that Jehovah's Witnesses were passing around and mocking the Catholic Church for them coming under fire. And, I just want to remind everybody, watch it, because the UN did a report against the Catholic Church. Well, we can see the same thing happening, and I would love to see the UN go after all of these organizations, not just religious, but all of these organizations who are hiding this child abuse problem. And if Mikey was done here, I wanted to mention some numbers that are on this Law 360 article, because this was wow. And I want to thank everybody who sent me links, or emails telling me, hey, did you hear about all the hundreds of lawsuits that were filed in New York State over the child abuse law that just went into effect? So I'm going to read some things here in this article. Hundreds of child abuse lawsuits poured into New York State courts last week as the Child Victims Act went into effect. So I take that back. It wasn't a law, it's an act. But attorneys said they were also pacing themselves for a longer rollout as a one-year door opened for older people to file suits against their childhood abusers. Now, we all know about the law, so I'm not going to read all of that. By 5 p.m. that day that this act went into effect, 5 p.m. that same day, okay, 427 Child Victim Act lawsuits were electronically filed statewide, with 169 filed in New York City alone, according to the New York State Unified Court System. But those lawsuits were only the opening salvo in a larger legal battle, according to several law firms filing such suits. And it's a really interesting article. I suggest going and reading it because they talk about these different law firms and how many each one. Some worked through the night just to get these suits filed electronically. Literally, we have hundreds of cases. We are hearing from hundreds of survivors of sexual abuse. It's just incredible to hear the voices of people, said Jeff Herman of Herman Law, speaking from the state courthouse steps in Manhattan on Wednesday. His firm ultimately filed 16 lawsuits that day, he said, and they plan to continue to slowly roll the suits out throughout the year, he said. We are trying to empower our victims and make them feel as though their voice is heard instead of muffling their voices in a stack of hundreds of lawsuits.
See, and that's one thing that we all recognize about the Watchtower and Babel Crap Society is that they have muffled all the voices of those that were victims of child sexual abuse. And, you know, other things that are associated within the Watchtower Babel Crap Society.
Yeah, exactly. And they say they think there's going to be a huge wave, and especially when news gets out that these abuse survivors can do this. And it said that many of the electronically filed lawsuits appear to be against the Roman Catholic Church, including separate dioceses also.
And the Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah.
So this whole thing isn't just about religion. It's about the Boy Scouts of America. You're going to see other things come forward, maybe even in the political world now. I mean, we all know the whole Jeffrey Epstein story and child sexual abuse. So it's all unraveling before our very eyes.
Yeah. The New York State Court Administrator announced it had designated 45 judges statewide, including 12 to handle cases in New York City. So they're appointing more judges, to this. And oh boy, wouldn't this be great if this happened in other states,
Yes.
nationwide. Yes. So this is good news for the abuse survivors. And I just want to mention that I had a Bible bully say that I'm hateful and snotty.
Hey, should be saying that about me.
And I just want to say that if I appear angry and upset, it's because I have to listen. Well, I don't have to, but I listen to these abuse stories every day. Hundreds and hundreds of abuse survivors. And I think if some of these Bible bullies had to deal with that, they might be a little bit more empathetic. Hopefully they would, if they're people of God, as they claim. So, my anger is directed at these organizations. And my heart, just bleeds and just in so much pain for these abuse survivors. So
Let's just cut through the chase, dear. I read the email, you read the email, and this Bible bully is presenting himself as the Messiah. It's just as simple as that.
well, he told me to humble myself because he's the brother in lead.
He's the brother in lead.
In the lead, and I guess I'm just a dumb woman.
Of course. That's the way they feel about it. Yeah, because, Kim and I recognize right away when someone's trying to use our channel to promote their version of the Book of Revelation because they've got it all figured out.
Oh, but they don't have an agenda because they're doing it for free.
Right. Yeah. I got
Yeah.
it. No, I got it. It's the same old technique.
Yeah.
We're being accused of misleading all of our subscribers.
Yeah, and we shouldn't just be focusing on Watchtower. We need to be preaching the true gospel and leading these people to God also. That's half of our job. Do you remember signing a contract in blood for doing that?
No.
Or even
no.
agreeing to something like that?
No, I haven't.
No.
But you know, when Jesus does come back, and Jesus points his finger at us, and you know, makes that little flame dance above my head, and gives me the power to raise the dead, then I will confirm that, you know, I can do that.
Yeah. Because right now, I care more about abuse survivors
That's right.
and people leaving cults than I do of telling them what to believe.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
So,
we'll keep everybody up to date as this news comes in. And I'm sure there's going to be more. I just have a gut feeling there's going to be more news, you know.
of course, there's going to be
coming.
more news because we all heard the report that the U.S. Attorney General is informing the state attorney generals to open an investigation.
So, you
It's
know,
just a matter of time.
if there's any, you know, abuse survivors who are willing to come forward, contact your state attorney.
State attorney.
You know, they're there for you. You know, that's why we pay their wages. So
Right.
contact them. Say, look, you know, I was abused, and get help. You know, we want to get these cases filed. And maybe if enough push, maybe these other states will do the same thing as New York now.
Yeah, and just rescind the statute of limitations for a year.
And if Trump wants to redeem himself in everybody's eyes, I think he should, you know, make this a nationwide, you know, executive order. Is let's do away with the statute of limitations on child abuse and get these cases in the courts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you for watching, everybody, and we hope you have a good evening.
Bye.
Bye.
It's a blunt and uncompromising report that hits the very heart of the abuse scandal. The United Nations today criticizing and lambasting the Catholic Church for shielding abusive priests from prosecution. In its 16-page report, the UN called on the Vatican to immediately remove all clergy who are known or suspected child abusers and turn them over to civil authorities. It called to hand over its files on the paedophiles and the church officials who concealed the crime and report all suspected cases to the authorities.
In one way, this is nothing new. The Catholic Church has been living with this cancer of the child sexual abuse scandals for more than a decade. And so in that level, it is certainly scathing, but it's unoriginal.
Still, it could be damaging for the Catholic Church, as the report accuses it of systematic cover-up.
The Holy See has consistently placed the preservation of the reputation of the Church and the protection of the perpetrators above children's best interests. In its concluding observations, the committee in this regard has highlighted the practice of offenders' mobility. They were moved from parish to parish when things were discovered.
For the victims of sexual abuse, this report has been a long time coming.
They have doubted our stories, they have doubted our motives, that our motives were because we were after money, or we were to destroy the church or attack the church.
The United Nations report is the most extensive critique of the alleged abuse taking place within the Catholic Church, but it's non-binding. So now it really falls in the hands of Pope Francis, and the hope that in this instance he can bring change and continue to win over his critics. Vatican insiders say that the Church quietly has been taking measures. In December, Pope Francis set up a commission to fight child abuse in the Church.
Immediately, there's going to be a lot of blowback in Catholic circles that will say this is the usual secular axe grinding against the church. But long term, what one hopes is that this report will strengthen the hand of reformers in the church against those who are still in denial.
Well, the Vatican has been quick to respond to the UN report, saying it will seriously consider the recommendations.
That the United Nations has said that there has been a systematic cover-up and that the needs of the church have been placed over the needs of the children. It feels like a validation.
Isa Suarez, CNN, London.